I've lived in this same Bradenton, Florida neighborhood for over 7 years now. Retired Army vet, mechanic by trade, Mustang enthusiast by heart. My place isn't fancy, but it's mine. One-story house, trimmed lawn, American flag flapping out front, and a cemented USPS mailbox I installed myself. My pride and joy. A perfectly restored '67 Mustang parked in the driveway, glossy cherry red, purring like a beast on the weekends when I take her for a spin down the Gulf. Most days, life's quiet. I tinker in my garage, sip cold beer while listening to classic rock, and help the occasional neighbor with an oil change or carburetor tune-up. I'm the guy who says good morning with a nod, waves at the mailman, and keeps to myself. That's the dream I worked for, earned with sweat and sacrifice, and I was living it. Then came Kevin. Kevin moved into the rental 2 houses, down loud, shirtless, and drunk more often than not. The kind of guy who makes you double-check your door locks at night, early 30s maybe, with a thick neck, beer gut, and a permascowl, like the world owed him something. His front yard, overgrown weeds, crushed beer cans, a busted lawn chair barely hanging on. He parked his faded red F-150 half on the grass, half in the street, like parallel parking was beneath him, but it wasn't just the mess, it was the mutts. Kevin had 2 of the ugliest, meanest-looking dogs I've ever seen, big, shaggy things that roamed free like they owned the block. Every morning, like clockwork, they'd trot into my yard and take a steaming dump right by my mailbox. For weeks I held my tongue, scooping up their crap with a shovel and gritting my teeth. I've faced down worse than this guy. You don't do 2 tours in the sandbox without learning patience. But stepping in fresh dog crap in your own yard for the 10th time, that'll test a man. So, one muggy April afternoon, I decided enough was enough. Kevin was out front, slouched in that broken lawn chair with a Bud Light in hand, shirtless of course, his dogs sniffing around my grass like it was their personal toilet. I walked over, calm, casual, hands in my pockets, voice steady. "Hey bro," I said. "Got a minute?" He didn't even look at me, just stared off into the distance like I was a ghost. I could hear his dogs start to circle my mailbox again. I tried again, firmer. "Kevin, can you keep your dogs out of my yard? They've been leaving piles by the box, and I'm getting real tired of cleaning it up." Now he looked at me slowly like it pained him. His eyes were bloodshot, lips curled into a half smile. "They're just dogs, man. Ain't hurting nobody. You got a problem with nature or something." I could feel the anger rising, but I kept it buried, deep. "I'm not trying to fight you, Kevin, just asking for respect. Keep him on your property, that's all." He let out this snort laugh, crushed his beer can, and tossed it onto the porch behind him. "Whatever, man, go, cry about it." Then he stumbled inside, slamming the screen door so hard the porch light flickered, and that was that. Or so I thought. The next morning, another steaming pile, bigger than usual, right in front of the mailbox. That's when I knew Kevin wasn't just messy, he was petty. I started keeping a notebook, jotting down every time his dogs showed up. Times, photos, even videos, little things. I didn't plan to use it, yet, but after years in the military, you learn when someone shows you they're gearing up for war, you don't ignore the signs. Then came the night I heard it. It was just past 3 a.m. when I woke up to a sound that every car guy dreads. Metal crunching, the kind of noise that wakes you straight out of a dead sleep. I threw on boots, grabbed my flashlight, and headed out the front door. My mailbox was lying flat, snapped clean at the base. It looked like someone had hit it at full speed. Tire tracks tore through my lawn like battle scars, and smeared across the bent steel post was something hard to miss. Red paint, same damn shade as Kevin's F-150. Now I was pissed, but I wasn't about to confront him in the middle of the night, not without backup. So I did what I've learned to do in situations like this. I documented everything, snapped photos from every angle. The mailbox, the tracks, the paint. I even measured the tire tread. At 4 a.m. I called the sheriff's office. A tired-looking deputy named Harris showed up, flashlight in one hand, coffee in the other. He took one look at the wrecked mailbox and raised an eyebrow. "You see who did this?" "No, but I've got a strong feeling it was my neighbor, red truck. We've had issues," he sighed. "Without proof, it's hard to press charges. But you're right, mailbox damage is a federal offense. 3 years if it sticks. 3 years. I wasn't smiling yet, but I felt something spark. If I played this right, Kevin might actually face consequences. Real ones. I didn't know it yet, but that mailbox was just the beginning. The next thing he'd target was my car, and that's when everything would change. After the mailbox incident, I kept my cool, Barely the county refused to pursue the vandalism without clear footage or a confession, and Kevin wasn't exactly volunteering one. Still, that didn't stop me from replacing the busted box with a new one, cemented and deeper, stronger. Right beneath the American flag, I raised a little higher that day. But the moment I installed the new mailbox, Kevin started doubling down. His dogs weren't just using my yard anymore, they were scratching up my garage door, barking at my wife when she pulled into the driveway. And one morning I caught them digging under the Mustang. But that was my line. I'm not a violent man, not anymore. But disrespect is a fire you don't play with, especially when it starts creeping toward the things you love. I ordered a set of perimeter cameras, top-line infrared, 360-degree motion detection, mounted 3 of them, one over the garage, one above the mailbox, and one hidden in the tree line that gave me full view of Kevin's driveway. My wife thought I was overreacting and said I should just report the dogs and leave it be. But I've learned the hard way people like Kevin Dante stop when you're nice. They stop when they hit something harder than themselves. It didn't take long for the cameras to start paying dividends. A few nights later, I caught Kevin on footage stumbling into my yard, drunk and barefoot, trying to urinate on the corner of my garage. Didn't even make it. Lost his balance and collapsed into the bushes. His dogs just sat there, panting. I saved the clip and labeled it, May 2nd, to 12 a.m., public intoxication plus trespassing. Still, I didn't send it to anyone. I was waiting for something bigger. And man, I got it. It was a Thursday late May, muggy and restless. I had taken the Mustang out earlier that morning for a short drive. Oil change, fresh polish, and a new decal I'd added to the rear glass. Respect is earned. It was corny, sure. But it was also a quiet message to the guy 2 doors down. That night, around 11:45 p.m., I was finishing up a carburetor rebuild in the garage when I heard the sound. Crack. Not a crash. Not a backfire. Not a firework. It was sharper, heavier. My ears knew it before my brain did a gunshot. I froze. The garage lights flickered from the sound wave. My heart thundered in my chest. I rushed out into the driveway and that's when I saw it. A hole, dead center in the hood of my Mustang. Smoke curling from the metal like breath in the cold. There was no mistaking it. Someone had just fired a round at my car, my Mustang, my pride and joy. I stood there, stunned, my hands trembling not from fear, but fury, that kind of white-hot anger that makes everything go silent. The neighborhood was dark, silent still. Then I heard it, Kevin laughing. It was faint, from his porch, but it was him. That low, wheezy chuckle I'd come to know and loathe. He was sitting out there holding a beer, and I swear I saw something long and metallic leaning against the railing next to him. I didn't approach, didn't say a word. Instead, I turned and went straight inside, called the cops. 911, what's your emergency? Yes ma'am, my car's just been shot. I believe my neighbor's armed. That got them moving. Within 10 minutes, 2 squad cars were in my driveway, flashing red and blue against the Mustang's bleeding hood. Deputies fanned out, one inspecting the car while the other approached Kevin's place with a hand near his holster. To his credit, Kevin didn't resist. But the moment they asked about a firearm, he got mouthy. You think I shot some car? I was just sitting here. The deputy gestured to the rifle leaning against the porch rail. This yours? Kevin smirked. It's Florida, open carry. Ain't illegal to sit with a gun. The deputy tilted his head. You drinking while holding it? Kevin hesitated. That's when they cuffed him. Bingo. See, in Florida, you can carry a gun. But if you're holding a firearm while intoxicated in public or discharging it recklessly, that's a whole other story. They found 2 spent casings on the porch. The bullet hole in my hood lined up with his trajectory. My camera on the tree, crystal clear audio of the gunshot, time-stamped, synced with the footage of him toasting his beer to my Mustang just moments before. They arrested him right there. I didn't gloat, didn't say a word, just stood on my porch with my arms crossed as they loaded him into the cruiser. Kevin was red-faced and cursing, yelling something about me setting him up. No, Kevin, you did this to yourself. The next morning I met with detectives. They took my footage, walked me through the evidence chain, and let me know what was coming. Reckless discharge of a firearm, destruction of property, and unlawful intoxication with a weapon. They also told me I could press civil charges, which I did. 2 weeks later, my mailbox stood tall, my Mustang was at the shop getting a new hood, and Kevin was out on bail, looking like a ghost. But the real blow was yet to come, because when you mess with a man's car, and he's got patience, proof, and the law on his side, that's when the real revenge begins. Kevin thought it was over, that the cuffs, the mugshot, The charge sheet, those were the worst consequences he'd face. He had no idea. See, I'm not just some guy with a Mustang. I'm someone who knows how to navigate bureaucracy like a submarine commander through a minefield. I've worked logistics, military. I've written reports that made 5-star generals sweat. So when Kevin shot my car, laughed from his porch, and tried to play it off like some drunk joke, I didn't retaliate with fists or threats. I retaliated with paperwork. It started with insurance. I documented the damage to the Mustang down to the millimeter, 3 separate repair estimates, a full paint match test. I filed a claim, handed the video evidence over, and made it known. This wasn't some rogue act of vandalism. This was an act of aggression with a firearm. The insurance company saw the footage clear as day and immediately greenlit full restoration costs. But that wasn't enough. Next came the civil suit. I wasn't looking to bankrupt the guy. I was looking to put the screws on so tight he'd never fire around in my direction again. My lawyer, beast of a man named Roland, ex-prosecutor turned civil litigator, took one look at the footage and smiled like he just found an all-you-can-eat buffet with no cameras. We sued for property damage, emotional distress, reckless endangerment, loss of use of vehicle, and intentional infliction of harm. The judge accepted the filing within 48 hours. Kevin was officially being sued. And this wasn't small claims, court, this was the real deal. Depositions, evidence lists, court dates. But I didn't stop there. Remember those cameras I'd installed? Turns out, Kevin's been a lot busier than I thought. I had footage of his dogs digging through my trash at 2 a.m., him stumbling around the street at night, shirtless, yelling at random cars. A moment at exactly 11:09 p.m., the week prior, where he appeared to relieve himself behind my wife's SUV. Roland had it time-stamped and labeled Public Indecency Number 3. We added it to the civil suit as part of a pattern of escalating behavior. But even that wasn't the finishing blow. That came when I discovered Kevin wasn't even the owner of the house he was living in. He was renting it from a woman named Linda who lived 2 towns over and had no idea what kind of circus her tenant was running. One found her through property records. Took me 15 minutes and a $9.95 fee. Then I wrote her a letter. No threats, no drama, just the facts. A detailed list of police reports involving Kevin, a USB drive with camera footage date labeled, watermarked a copy of the lawsuit, and a polite but firm request to consider terminating his lease in accordance with the nuisance clause present in 99% of rental agreements. 2 days later, Linda called me. I had no idea, she said, her voice shaking. I rented to him after his last landlord said he just needed a quiet place. I didn't know about the arrest. Oh, you will, I said calmly. I believe the court hearing is scheduled for July 14th. You may want to attend, she did. And when she saw the footage, especially the slow-motion replay of Kevin firing toward my Mustang, her jaw dropped. Linda told the court she was initiating eviction proceedings immediately for cause. The judge gave a small nod and made it official. Kevin's days in the neighborhood were numbered. But, the cherry on top, the HOA. Now, I've never been one to involve the HOA. I usually see them as an overreaching arm of passive-aggressive retirees, but this time they were my secret weapon. Turns out Kevin had racked up over $2,100 in fines for various violations in leash dogs, noise complaints, visible trash cans, and excessive yard clutter. But the board had never enforced them. They'd been letting it slide. So I went to the next HOA meeting with a printout of the police report, a folder of his citations, and a memory stick full of video evidence. I didn't even have to speak. I just handed it all to the treasurer and sat down. 10 minutes later, they voted to escalate enforcement and sent him an official notice. Pay the fines or face a lien on the property. Except he didn't own the property. So they sent the notice to Linda, and Linda, she forwarded the cost to Kevin's deposit and accelerated the eviction. By the end of that week, Kevin had a court date, a civil lawsuit, an eviction notice, an HOA enforcement letter, and a $6,000 repair bill from my insurance company coming his way. That wasn't revenge. That was precision-engineered consequences. He started avoiding me. No more drunken porch cackling. No more dogs on my lawn. The man who once strutted around with a beer in one hand and a .22 in the other now scurried from his car to the front door like a wet rat avoiding a hawk. But I wasn't done yet, because if Kevin thought all of this would stay quiet, if he thought no one in town would find out what he did, Dundee had another thing coming. By the start of the next week, Kevin was living on borrowed time. His lease termination date had been finalized. Linda, the landlady who once had no clue who she was renting to, had formally filed the eviction paperwork with the local court. According to the paperwork, Kevin had 15 days to vacate, but eviction wasn't enough. Kevin didn't just fire a round at my car. He fired it with the confidence of a man who thought he owned the street. The way he laughed, the way he mocked the police when they arrived, it wasn't the act of a one-time drunk making a mistake. It was the exposure of his real self. And the neighborhood, they deserved to see who they'd been living next to. I didn't start by going door to door, that's not my style. No need to shout it from rooftops when you can let the truth move through the neighborhood like a quiet wildfire. So I started with the Neighborhood Watch Facebook group. The admins were two moms who'd lived on our block for over a decade, and their rule was simple: no political fights, no rumors, just facts. So when I messaged them a brief post request with attached footage and a police report link, they called me instantly. I told them everything. They watched the video. They gasped when the gun went off, recoiled at the slurred threats Kevin had muttered into the wind, and when I told them he was being evicted, sued, and facing court, they nodded in grim agreement. We'll allow the post. This kind of thing, people need to know. I posted under my name, no anonymity, no baiting, just a statement titled, "Why There's a Bullet Hole in My Mustang, and Why You Should Know Who Lives on Lot 17. The post exploded. Within 2 hours, it had over 100 comments. Some people said they'd heard the gunshot that night and assumed it was fireworks. Others shared their own weird stories: Kevin's dogs roaming off-leash, aggressive shouting during late-night arguments, loud music at 2 a.m. One woman said he yelled at her 10-year-old for riding a scooter past his driveway. Another said he'd threatened her husband over a supposed parking space dispute. One guy even said Kevin offered to sell him a Glock out of his garage for cash. It all started connecting. Kevin wasn't just a jerk, he was a powder keg. And it was pure luck. No one had been hurt before he fired that shot. The most unexpected part, the support I got. People dropped by with coffee, kind words, even baked goods. A teenage neighbor offered to detail my Mustang for free after hearing about the damage. A retired couple across the street asked if I needed help with cameras or lighting. I hadn't realized how many people Kevin had alienated. Everyone just kept their heads down because they didn't want the fight. But now that the first domino had fallen, the floodgates opened. Then something really interesting happened. One of the group members who saw the post, Sandra, happened to be the HR director at a regional HVAC company. Guess where Kevin worked? Yep, same company. She messaged me privately. "Hey, I had a weird feeling when I saw the name. They just promoted him to a field supervisor. He's supposed to be in homes every day. I'm going to escalate this to corporate. That kind of behavior is a legal nightmare for us." I sent her the footage, the police report, and the court summons. 3 days later, Sandra followed up. Kevin had been suspended without pay pending investigation. By the end of the week, he was fired. Not because I asked for it. Not because I screamed for revenge. Because his actions were a liability, and now the receipts were public. But even that wasn't the final blow. The day Kevin's eviction deadline hit, he didn't leave quietly. He'd spent the night drinking at least that's what the trash pile said. And around noon, he began dragging boxes onto the lawn in a furious frenzy. He knocked over his own grill, smashed a folding table against the trash can, threw a box of old DVDs into the middle of the cul-de-sac. Then he saw me. I was standing at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed, sipping coffee. My Mustang, now fully repaired and gleaming, sat behind me like a chrome sentinel. Kevin staggered forward a few steps, eyes bloodshot, and shouted, "You ruined my life." I didn't say a word, just tilted my head and waited. The sheriff's deputy, who had been sent to supervise the eviction, calmly stepped between us and said, "You've got 45 minutes, Mr. Calhoun. I suggest you use them to collect your things, not your enemies." Kevin spat toward my mailbox and stormed back inside. 10 minutes later, he came out with 2 garbage bags full of clothes and drove off in a rusty truck with a broken tail light. He never said goodbye. The landlord changed the locks. The HOA board sent out a formal notice confirming he was permanently barred from returning to the property under any lease or ownership. And that would have been the end of it, except for the town newsletter. Every quarter, our small township publishes a public report of all civil filings, arrests, and housing disputes for transparency. Guess whose name showed up? Kevin Calhoun, arrested for reckless endangerment and unlawful discharge of a firearm, civil suit pending, evicted from residence at Brookside Lane. It was official. Kevin had become a case study in what happens when arrogance meets accountability. And I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't throw a punch, threaten a soul, or bang on a single door. I just documented, filed, reported, and let the system eat him alive from the inside out. Weeks passed. Kevin's old house sat there like a burned-out monument, quiet, hollow, and oddly smaller without his truck choking the driveway. The lawn, once wild and trampled, started to recover. Birds came back. Kids played freely again. The energy of the whole block changed. But something deeper happened too. You see, when a man fires a bullet in a neighborhood like ours, one full of veterans, teachers, nurses, and retirees, it doesn't just put a hole in a car, it puts a hole in trust. And it takes time, truth, and transparency to rebuild that. That's exactly what the neighborhood did. After Kevin was gone, the HOA, for the first time in years, held an open town hall, and I went, not because I had an agenda, but because they asked me to. The same board that once rubber-stamped every lease, who ignored complaints about noise, parking, and strange behavior, now wanted to hear from residents. They didn't want another Kevin, and while I've never been one for standing behind a mic, that night I spoke. I told them what had happened, not just the bullet, but the threats, the intimidation, the subtle reign of fear that one man imposed just because people let him. I explained how easy it is to overlook small red flags until one day you redialing 911 with a shaking hand and a punctured hood. The crowd was quiet, and when I finished, they clapped. That night the HOA voted to change its lease review policy. From then on, all tenants needed full background checks and references from previous landlords. They also added a clause for immediate expulsion in cases of violence or credible threats. But the best part, they made me head of the Neighborhood Safety Advisory Committee. It wasn't an ego trip, it was a symbol, a way to make sure that what happened to me would never happen to anyone else again. We coordinated with the local police for community workshops, set up a real-time reporting app for suspicious behavior, and helped install doorbell cams for 6 senior homes, funded entirely by voluntary donations. As for me and the Mustang, oh, she's back better than ever. The insurance company not only covered the repairs but threw in a full detailing and a set of upgraded security features. She's now got bullet-resistant film on the windows, a motion-triggered recording system, and one hell of a custom wrap across the hood. It reads, in slick graphite letters, "Don't miss again." People laugh when they see it. Some even ask if it's a movie reference. I just smile. But fate had one more twist to offer. A few months after the dust settled, I was out back watering the garden when I heard someone shout from across the fence. It was my neighbor from the corner, Tom, a quiet man in his 60s, who always kept to himself. "I meant to tell you," he called. "You were right about Kevin." I raised an eyebrow. "You dealt with him too?" Tom nodded. "Yeah. The week before the shooting, he came by trying to sell me a gun out of his garage. Said it was clean and off books. Wanted cash. I told him no, but I didn't report it. Didn't want to start trouble." He looked down, almost ashamed, and then said something I'll never forget. "But when I saw you stand up to him and win, I realized that staying quiet wasn't keeping the peace. It was surrendering it." He paused, looked up, and added, "Thank you." I didn't need thanks, but that moment, that was real. That was victory. Because revenge isn't about rage. It's not about shouting louder or swinging harder. It's about restoring what someone tried to steal from you: your peace, your place, your dignity. And Kevin, well, the last I heard, he'd moved to counties over, tried to rent a new place. But that bullet, that arrest, that Facebook post, they followed him. Landlords Google, employers background check, and neighborhoods remember. He's now living with his cousin, working night shifts at a warehouse. No guns, no badge of authority. Just a man whose past is now tattooed on every lease application he'll ever submit. As for our neighborhood, it's thriving. Barbecues are back. Kids ride their bikes without looking over their shoulder. And every time I roll out in the Mustang, people smile, not because the car's pretty, but because they remember the story. The guy who fired a bullet to scare the neighborhood, and wound up silenced by the very community he underestimated. That's what happens when the right people don't back down. And that, my friend, is the cleanest kind of revenge there is.